together in a region. Think regionally. You know that Think Global, Act Local? That is a UN plan. That is a UN slogan, right? Now they got a new one. It's think globally, think globally, think regionally, act locally. Think regionally, think regionally. Remember? Okay. Hello. So, okay, here we go. Don't forget, when you're visioning on somebody else's property, okay? When you're coloring in with your crayons, and those people are probably not there. So, sustainable development and smart growth, it's an ideology. It's not just a building style. It's called the new urbanism. It's anti-rural. I just came from Maine, the state of Maine. And I looked at, of course, I travel all over the United States, and I always research wherever it is I'm going. And I looked at Maine, and of course, Maine has the exact same thing as everybody else. It's not different. They just have a little different names for it. And I was looking at their wildland stuff, and I looked at Maine Earth First. And what does it say right there on the website, right on their first page? It says, visualize industrial collapse. Yeah. That sounds like fun, doesn't it? Visualize industrial collapse. So it gets worse. I have to say, this is about winners and losers, isn't it? Any idea what you're going to be? So it gets worse. Because, we know we have 50 states, right? We have 50 states, but it's not 50 states anymore. It is 11 mega regions. I'm not making this up, okay? In case you think I'm making this up, I am not. You go to america2050.org. You see mega regions. That is a project of the Lincoln Land Institute, the Urban Land Institute, and the Regional Plan Association. And the idea, which is being implemented right now, is that you don't need 50 states, right? Because you've got 26% of the land area with 74% of the population in it already. So what you need to do is get those people who are still out there in the rural areas into the city centers. And it's not like they chopped up the U.S. into 11 sections. No. It is 11 locations that are the highest density population. This is a war on rural people, okay? So this is how it works. Now, Washington, there's 11 megaregions. Washington is in a megaregion. Not all of Washington, though. Because why? Because remember I said it breaks jurisdictional boundaries. So even your regional councils do not include your entire county often. We're talking about breaking your ability to have an impact with your vote. So what these are, megaregions, a portion of Washington State, a portion of Oregon, and what else? Part of Canada. In Southern California, you've got SoCal, and that includes part of Southern California and part of Mexico. That's right. Now, we're serious here. You talk about breaking jurisdictional boundaries, you talk about breaking sovereign boundaries. You're talking about breaking sovereign boundaries. And this is being implemented right now. Right now. They're expecting huge population increases. Now, everywhere I go, I speak to groups of people who look like this. I'm not having any more kids. I don't know about you. I'm not long for the planet, and neither are a lot of you. Yet, these predictions are for huge population increases for the city centers, and this is why, remember crisis, panic, we've got to build high-density urban development, or what are we going to do with all these people who are coming? Now, I'm not talking about people who are coming over the border. I'm talking about people. Where are these population increases coming from? Most of us, by the year 2050, which is the drop-dead date, no pun intended, are going to be drop dead. So where are these population increases supposed to be coming from? The rural and suburban areas. This is reorganization of every single city and every single county and every single state in the United States. All right? And I'll tell you what, a lot of cities that you're seeing high density development in now are interim cities. They are not the ultimate stop. They themselves will be cleaned out of people, and the people will then be put into the higher density cities. You want to see where it's going? This is one world government. You want to see where it's going? It is the EU. Take a look at the European Union, right? That started with a trade agreement. Now, I just spoke at an international conference on global governance. I didn't even know that's what I was talking about, but then I found out it's global governance we're talking about. So one of the other speakers was President Václav Klaus of the Czech Republic and Prime Minister John Howard of Australia. So when President Klaus of the Czech Republic was speaking, he said, you know what? We were under the control of the Soviet Union, and we wanted nothing more than to be free. We wanted to be free of the Soviet Union. And all we wanted to do was get free of the Soviet Union and join the EU and be part of Europe. He said, we did that. And now we're under the thumb of Brussels. And it's even worse. He said, yes, I'm president of a country. What does that mean? This is a real serious concern. We are really talking about loss of sovereignty. And yes, I know you know about the United Nations policy on land use, right? Because, of course, it was established in 1976 with Habitat 1, where they said that, you could probably even recite this with me, that land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals, and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market, right? Oh no, private land ownership is a principal accumulation of wealth and concentration of wealth. And therefore, it contributes to social injustice. Social injustice. Public control of land is therefore indispensable. This is where it's going. If you have doubts about communitarian law in the United States, you ever tried to get justice in the court? You know how much fun that is. How about your family law courts? Have you seen that? Communitarian law in the United States. When you look at the 2005 Supreme Court decision, the Kelo decision, most people think that meant that what the decision was in the Kelo decision was that the government could take your land and give it to you. No, that is not what it was. That was already in existence with redevelopment. We've had that for years. No. What the Kelo decision said was under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, you know that you are guaranteed due process and you are guaranteed the right to be paid fairly, just compensation for your property when it's taken by the government for a public use. So what did that Kelo decision do? It redefined public use to anything your government said it was. The end justifies the means. That is the end of private property, the end. Now we get to the wildlands. And this is where we are right now. And this is what this is really about here, right? 42% of Washington State, only 42% of the Washington State is owned by the government, federal, state, and local government. Only 42%. That's not enough. 2 million roadless acres here in Washington State. But that's not enough, right? No, we've got the North American wildways. This is the United States and Canada and Mexico. But you know what? Here's a map with no lines on it because you know why? Animals don't know when they're crossing a boundary because we have to think about the world as a world without boundaries so that animals can move freely through these corridors. If you can see these, they take up most of the land mass, right? Here you are in Washington, you're in two of them, the Pacific and the spine of the continent. Across Canada? Well, who needs Canada? How about this? You've got like, you've got Arizona, New Mexico. Who needs Arizona, New Mexico, Idaho, and Washington? Forget it, right? These are corridors. You've got cores, buffers, and corridors. And this is the plan. To what? To move you out of these areas. Now, they don't have the money to buy this stuff, do they? No, they don't have the money to buy this stuff, so they are going to either take conservation easements, that's where they pay you for those rights, supposedly. Those rights that aren't worth anything when they're taken away from you when they're not paying you. But when you're a crony, or when you might, be making some deal with them, then they're going to pay you for a conservation easement, right? But otherwise, they're just going to take it through regulatory takings and not compensate you at all, and bleed you to death, so that eventually they can take your land. Well, maybe they'll acquire the fee as well because you are desperate now. That's right. They split your title. What this does is it takes land out of private ownership, and this is the goal. The goal is to move you ultimately off of this land, out of this area, out of most of this state. That is the goal. Now, 40% of the land in the continental U.S. is actually in a watershed. 40% at least. And apparently it all drains to the Mississippi. Maybe it's like a piece of paper that's... You've got 10,000 rivers and streams that are flowing into the Puget Sound. You in a watershed? Probably. You can't use it. How about that? This is what happens. You think they're not taking you off. For those of you who still think that they're not trying to get you off of your rural and suburban land, let me tell you about my county, Sonoma County. We're considered the wine country of California. It's a rural county. We've got 1,384 miles of rural roads, right? County roads. The county, a couple years ago, they said, you know what? We can't afford to pave more than 150 miles of that 1,384 miles of roads. We're going to pulverize the rest of the roads, the rest of that 1,200 miles plus, and turn it into gravel. You think that's going to have an impact on your land value? Is that going to affect your ability to get your goods to market? Is that going to have an impact on your ability to sell your property or use your property? How about when they close your rural post office, right? The only way that you have, besides in-person conversation, that you can have a private communication with someone is through the mail. But they're going to close your rural post office. They're going to close your rural school. And then the less people who own private property out there, the less people there are paying taxes out there, the less services there are, the less support for your infrastructure, and it spirals down. This is the way it's designed. This is what it's designed to do. It's designed to destroy your ability to be independent. This is the purpose of this plan. In fact, the industrial and economic collapse is the purpose of this plan. This is the goal of the plan. And it's been very successful, wouldn't you say? Very successful. In fact, hey, how about those people, the Sacketts in Idaho? They won that Supreme Court decision, right? What did they get? That poor couple who bought a $25,000 piece of land. I mean, you get much cheaper than that for a piece of land? They had no money. They bought a piece of land on the side of a lake, a piece of land like this. And they got their permits to build. Everything was cool, right? And then here comes the EPA knocking on the air there. They said, hey, you better put this back the way it was because you've got a wetland here. They said, no, wait, we got our permits. What are you talking about? No, you've got a wetland on your slanted property. And we're going to charge you $37,000 plus a day if you don't put it back just the way you found it. Well, they fought. They fought that. And they went all the way to the Supreme Court. What did they get? What did we win at the Supreme Court? What did we win? What did we win? I'll tell you. We won the right to challenge the government's threats to fine us for building on our own property. Tell me what a dictatorship looks like. Now, you know what? You need water. We're out here. There's a lot of water in Washington. You got a couple things. You got trees and you got water, right? And a few other things.